Scanning for audio.
Welcome to a Tin Dog podcast, this time talking about one of the latest releases from Big Finish, Unit Assembled, although arguably it should be called Unit Reassembled, which admittedly sounds like something you'd ask for in IKEA. So perhaps they went for the right thing. It's not going to sound like the Avengers after all. It's Series 4. Now, I'm not going to bother doing the obligatory gag about not being able to remember Series 3 because it was the one with the silence in, okay? Just imagine I've spent 5 minutes going, can't remember that, I've no idea, let's have a look on the shelf, all that nonsense. Just imagine I've done that. We'll skip it and we'll go back to this review. Series 4 has got, well, let's face it, in the future, you'll listen to this, not this review, obviously, you'll listen to this box set and you'll just have that warm feeling you get when you shove in an old Pertwee disc. But it's actually so much more than that. It's just lovely. Look, I could give you an in-depth, massive review about all of the ins and outs of the characters and all of the little things that have gone on, and you know what? I actually will do that in a moment. But basically, it comes down to it, it's just lovely. That's not admittedly much of a review. Me just going, yeah, it's great. Go away and watch it. Go away and listen to it. Whatever. They're not great reviews. But you know what? When something is this great, finding a way to review it's almost impossible. Yes, I'll talk about all of the old characters coming back and dominating, or all the old monsters, old Silurians, new Silurians, sea devils, pterodactyls, dinosaurs. Oh, the list just goes on. But let's face it, the real dinosaurs you want me to talk about are Mike Yates, Sergeant Benton, and Joe. It's that simple. It's glorious. Yes, of course you've got Osgood just in there to make things better. You've got the new characters that, well, Big Finish have created in order to flesh out units. You've got name checks backdating to 1988 and oh, it's just lovely. But like I said, as reviews go, just me sitting here saying it's lovely, not enough really, is it? Let's have a look at the synopsis. Basically, you've got two authors taking over this entire box set, and they're both old hands. Well, relatively old hands, definitely talented hands for this whole thing to exist in. You've got Matt Fitton doing episodes 1 and 4, and you've got Guy Adams doing 2 and 3. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to read something to you. Bear with me, it makes sense. After Hours by Michael Gilroy Sinclair. Mike surveyed the pub as he hung the last of the pewter tankards back onto their hooks. He doubted that he would ever get used to the smell of the pub now that the smoking ban was in place. There had been something welcoming about the combined smell of beer and tobacco that made him feel at home and took him back to his youth. Home. Soon he would be making his way up the stairs to the comfort of his own bed and the sweet release of sleep. These days home was this very pub. As a retirement plan goes, the Angel's Arms wasn't a bad way to spend the rest of his days. Retirement, even semi-retirement, had not been something he had even thought would happen to him. He had always assumed that he would die in a blaze of glory or be turned into a pile of unrecognisable dust. The pub was less than a stone's throw from the huge statue that is the Angel of the North, and under its feet, its many secrets. Playing the part of mine host had come surprisingly easily, and he had enjoyed the company of the locals and their strange way of speaking. He had found that, once you had your ear in, they sound almost English. Somewhere to his right, an involuntary cough caught his attention. "Hello, we're closed," Mike called out. He had dealt with stragglers before. "Mike?" came an old but familiar voice. "Who is it?" And from the corner of the room, behind the electronic bandit, stood a tall and haunted figure. He was wearing an old suit and an older coat. Mike looked into the gloom. There was a time when he would have been aware of any intruder. His reflexes and senses were slowly fading. "You got old, Mike," said the figure with a smile in his voice. "Old age comes to us all, Sergeant Benton," declared Mike, realising who the figure was. Imperceptibly, and only for a moment, the landlord and the customer became comrades in arms once again, as they saluted each other and then hugged in a way that only people who had saved the world can do. And then the moment was gone. They were nothing more than old men standing in a closed pub once again. "What brings you to my neck of the woods?" asked Mike, clearly pleased to see his old unit colleague. "I need help, Mike. I need your help." Mike looked at the old soldier, and he could see that he had fallen on hard times. "Of course. How much do you need?" John Benton laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had not laughed in a while. "I'm okay for cash." He looked down at himself. "Though I can see why you might think I need that kind of help." "What is it, then?" "It's the singing. I can't stop the singing." End of excerpt. You see, last year, the Paul Spragg competition came our way, and that was one of my entries. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that I wanted my story to be absorbed into any sort of Big Finish collective consciousness, and you know fine well that it didn't win. I kind of just wanted to share it with you, because episode 1 takes place in a pub, and the genius is that where I had Mike Yates running the pub, Benton is running this pub, and he's about to retire. Yes, it's written so much better than I could ever have managed. And yes, I'm not saying even for a second that there's any form of cross-pollination, just that the idea of unit soldiers being in a pub and discussing old times is something fairly obvious to anyone, and is a nice touch. Because old soldiers telling old tales is something that is designed for companion chronicles. And because this is a unit story and has, well, I don't want to use the words base under siege feel to it, it's just damn brilliant. You've got old people discussing old things. Oh, and there's just the most glorious Easter egg. So yes, Mike Yates, Benton, and a host of brand new people, all chatting about the brig. It just works, and that's only episode 1. Throw into that some Silurians attacking who've just woken up somewhere in the Lake District. It's just brilliant. And that's just the beginning. As always with these box sets, each individual story is a self-contained thing, just like the current 3-parter on TV. You've got individual stories you can watch and experience all separately, but they do come together to make something great. Here's the synopsis. Call to Arms by Matt Fitton. Mike Yates braves a stormy night in the lakes to help celebrate a milestone for John Benton. An evening of fond reminiscences of old glories and friends await, but a long-buried past is about to catch up with them. Meanwhile, on the rain-lashed moors, what begins as a routine mission for modern-day unit quickly becomes a fight for survival. It just feels lovely. I'm sorry, I just keep saying that. And that leads us into part 2, Tidal Wave by Guy Adams. Here's the synopsis for that. When an experimental tidal power generator needs its eco-friendly credentials checked, Kate Stewart calls in an expert. Soon, Joe Jones is bound for the South Atlantic, along with an awestruck Osgood. But out at sea, a treacherous plan is set in motion to awaken an ancient race beneath the seabed, an army of sea devils. Oh, if you thought episode 1 was good, just wait till you hear what they've done with Joe. They've taken the Joe Jones that we experienced in the Sarah Jane stories. That whole flashback, that whole seeing the Doctor afresh and anew and having everything reawakened, and they've taken it to the next step. Joe Jones is Jo Grant, and she hasn't changed, and yet she's evolved. Oh, how beautifully she has. She's grown up, but her passion has become even more intense. If ever you loved Jo, you will love her even more in this. And Jo and Osgood together, oh, how great is that? I mean, I can't tell you about the pure excitement you experience while listening to this. It's just comfort listening. I don't want to spoil any more than that because the synopsis literally says it all. You can go away and listen to this till your heart's content. Because when you've got Jo describing how she feels about the Sea Devils now and then, and how she feels about the planet, well, you're just going, yeah, Jo, I'm so with you. And as for her extended family, that's just brilliant. I know I love Katie Manning playing, well, Iris Wildthyme, but I just can't get enough of her playing Jo and Osgood. If that's not a spin-off series waiting to happen, I simply don't know what is. As again, it could be an individual standalone story, but that leads us up to part 3. Now, because part 3 is a bit, how shall I put this, old unit light, it makes you think, when you're listening to it, oh, that's a good story, but when are the proper people turning up? Now, it also has, well, how do I put this? One of my least favourite aspects of the whole of the new unit is Kate Lethbridge-Stewart. Now, I probably will be shot and I'll at least have to hand in my good fan badge. I don't find Kate on audio half as accessible as I do on TV. She has not a habit of over-pronouncing lines, but she says things. She says things very clearly, very, very clearly, and quite slowly. Her delivery is paced. Now, I know that's probably more to do with the characterisation and the fact that she's giving out commands and orders. But perhaps, for me, there's something a little bit lacking. Now, I'm not saying that for a moment that what's needed is that thing that Nick Briggs once joked about when he was talking to a certain actress who would always remain nameless, saying that all of the acting was obviously put in post-production. No, not quite like that. Perhaps it's because I wanted the story itself to be just a little bit more pacey. But how it could be more pacey is utterly beyond me, because a lot happens. Trust me, it's particularly good. And of course, there's one actress I've not mentioned. Or actor. I'm always forgetting the gender-neutral words. This is the home of old-school opinion, after all. You've got Madame Vastra. All right, you haven't. You've got the actress who plays Madame Vastra, who's played far too many Silurians over the time. It's a bit like getting Mr. Starkian to play a handful of different Sontarans. Well, here she's playing a different lot of Silurians. The same type that you saw on TV. But don't hold that against them. You've got far too much nostalgia going on round here to begin with. It's an underground adventure story, and admittedly you've got the whole darkness thing, so people have to explain things, and yes, Osgood, and there's a lot of cramped things, but let's experience this way. There's actually a line in this story that talks about them being claustrophobic and not liking tight spaces, but almost a similar thing went on in the episode 2, which kind of counteracts this and doesn't balance. This is me being ultimately picky, because at its core, it's a rollickingly good adventure. And of course, that brings us directly to part 4, and of course the big payoff. Once you're in part 4, there's no stopping them. You've got Mike, you've got John Benton. Yes, I know we're going to be calling him John Benton from now on. That's the way it is. We've got references back to John's companion chronicle with his wife. And we've also got Jo turning up, as well as Osgood and a host, everyone from New Unit. It's just glorious. I can't tell you how much I wanted to see this on TV, because I could see the locations. I could see the Houses of Parliament with a Silurian in the Speaker's chair. I could see the dinosaurs over London. And I could see everyone from Unit just being glorious. If they don't have these people back as advisors or at least characters in the future, it's a waste. Get these people while you can, because we just love them. Thank you, Big Finish. Thank you so much for doing this, because you didn't have to go back to the past. You didn't have to give us what we want. It could so easily have just been fan service, and I suppose on some levels that's what it is. But you've done us proud. Everyone involved. So thank you. I'll let you listen to the trailer and decide for yourself. So until next time, be seeing you.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Unit assembled.
Mr. Benton.
Is it little Katie?
Is that actually Captain Mike Yates? Mikey Yates!
Joe!
What on earth brings you two here?
Ready the transportation disc. Let us rise!
Looks like they're coming to us. Those holes opening up in the tunnel floor.
Get back, Captain! It's too late!
I'll retune the Scion cannon to Reptilia Sapiens.
Scion cannon? You're going with that?
Rain Blaster's a bit too Josh.
Elite warriors, we are under attack. Immediate interception is required.
Sam!
You swam in here?
I may not get the biggest office, but I've still got all the swimming certificates.
Well, you can ride back with us.
Step into the escape chute. Now that sounds like fun! It's not. I did it during basic training and threw up in my helmet.
Is this the best that 10 million years of evolution can achieve? Then our victory is assured.
All right, Mr. Benton.
Holding on, miss. Hello, we've got company.
And this Great Britain will be our homeland.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Touching as this reunion is, if you've all quite finished your hellos, can we get on?
Looks like we're back in action.
That was the Doctor Who Tin Dog podcast, available on iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, RSS, Vimeo, and across the internet. Doctor Who and its associated properties are all copyright and trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Why not become a supporter by visiting patreon.com/tindog. Contact the show on tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. The Tin Dog podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.